everybody, Cinema Sickness here with your daily sickness video, and as always, hope you guys are having a fantastic day. It is that time again, time to take a look at all the titles I've recently checked out. I'll just give you my brief and quick thoughts on each of them. So as always, without any further ado, let's just dive right into this pile so this video isn't 3 hours long. So first up, with a little bit of pun intended here, is a movie that definitely got panned by the critics, and that is Pan, this year being Pan 3D. I did watch it in 3D. 3D was pretty good. I would recommend it. But all in all, I thought the movie was fairly decent. I actually enjoyed this movie. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't an absolutely, fantastic film. But did it entertain me? Did I enjoy it? Yes, I did. Like I said, it had its issues. It wasn't perfect. Definitely requires you to have some knowledge of Peter Pan and where the story is going to progress, since this is kind of the beginnings of Peter Pan's story and the beginnings of Captain Hook's story. So it does require you to have further knowledge of the story, because they do make references and kind of winks and nods and hints at where the story is going to progress. So it does require that, but otherwise it was pretty good. I would say that my major downfall of this movie was when Blackbeard's, I guess his like slaves basically would sing modern songs. I think they were singing like some Nirvana and stuff like that. Like, what? Like, where does that come into play? That made no sense, especially since like the time period this movie takes place in. It takes place in Neverland, but even the time period it takes place in within the actual world, it doesn't really make sense for them to be singing those modern songs. It seemed really out of place, completely pointless. I really hate when they do that in movies. It makes me think of like A Knight's Tale, when they sing like, We Will Rock You and stuff like that. It just seems really strange, really out of place. It's just completely pointless. It doesn't make any sense. It didn't need to be done. I'd have to say, out of the entire movie, that was the one thing where I was like, really? Like, I actually hated was the inclusion of just the crowd singing modern rock songs. I didn't get it at all. But besides that, I actually thought the movie was pretty good. It was a decent story. It was entertaining. It's a shame this movie did bad, because I would actually be interested in further story. I would be interested in seeing, how things go. Obviously, with Captain Hook and Peter kind of being friends in this movie, it's interesting to see how they are going to eventually progress into being enemies, and I would really love to see where this one goes, but I don't know if we're going to get that. If you guys have heard anything, leave some comments down below, but I'm assuming we're not going to get any follow-ups to this, as the movie didn't do too well, and a lot of people didn't seem to like this one. But all in all, I thought it was entertaining, I thought it was enjoyable, and I just enjoy Peter Pan, so I would like to see more of this, but I doubt we will get it, unfortunately. Again, 3D was pretty decent. I would say it's nothing you need to see in 3D, but if you're interested, it was alright. So then I did some marathoning. Before I headed off to Walt Disney World, I decided to finally get around to watching something I'd been wanting to check out, especially since I just got the last season of this. So I sat down, and I believe in like about a week's time, completely marathoned all of Californication. And this is an absolutely fantastic show. This show was not difficult at all to just binge watch. I could not stop watching as I put in one disc, and I would sit through and just force myself, not even force myself, but before I know it, I'd be finishing up a disc like every day, because I just got so wrapped up in this, and it was such a great story. All about Hank Moody, and he's a New York writer, and he moves out to California, and basically just how his life just goes to hell, all due basically to sex. I mean, that's why this show is called Californication. He's out in California, and his whole life goes to hell with sex. And it's interesting because the first time it happens isn't even his fault. It's basically his wife, or not his wife, his who he wants to be his wife, but basically kind of seems like his wife in the movie, or the show. His girlfriend cheats on him, and things just kind of go down from hill from there, and he's just constantly banging girls after girls after girls. But I gotta say, he's definitely banging top shelf, because the girls he has sex with are really, really attractive. Yeah, it's pretty amazing who he pulls in. But he's just banging girls left and right, and the fun part of it is that pretty much everybody who he nails just leads to something horrible. It's not like he has sex with somebody and okay, everything's great, and she, whatever. No, it's like it always backfires on him. Like he has sex with some girl, and then something horrible happens because of that. Everything from him having sex with like basically a 16-year-old, which was a complete misunderstanding. He had no idea he was having sex with a 16-year-old, so that was interesting. But everything from that to just constant, just horrible things happening to him. And it's definitely one of those shows where, I mean, even kind of like it's another Showtime show, so like Weeds, where it's just you constantly want to see how things are just going to be progressing. Like, how can things get worse than it already is? And it's one of those shows where just things do constantly keep getting worse. I would say, and a lot of people, a lot of critics, I think, had the same thing to say because I read some stuff online about this. The show maybe lasted one season longer than it really needed to. They could have left it on season 6 with a because season 7 was left on a bit of a cliffhanger. They Hank and his girlfriend go off. Who he's been trying to get back with the entire series. They go off to New York to see their daughter, and you're kind of left like, okay, are they going to get back together? Are they not? Who knows what's going to happen? But in season 6, they also kind of leave season 6 at the end with a cliffhanger, and it kind of just could have ended there. If you're going to leave the series on a cliffhanger anyway, season 6 could have been an okay way to leave it, but they kept going, and it kind of seems like season 7 was just kind of like a thrown-on season. It just seemed very tacked on. It wasn't as entertaining. I mean, it still was good, and I'm not saying don't see it. No, don't watch seasons like 1 through 6 and stop. No, see season 7. It was good. It just wasn't as good. The story wasn't as enjoyable. But all in all, this is an absolutely fantastic show. Californication is great. Just interesting to see how horrible your life can go if you just constantly just keep banging chicks, because it's interesting, because that's all Hank is doing in this. Just one chick after another, and his life just becoming a horrible mess due to every girl he shacks up with. But awesome show. I loved it. Would definitely recommend it. And a lot of fun binge watching that one. So next up was Everest. And as I told you guys, I was really looking forward to seeing this one. I was really hoping it wasn't going to let me down, not like Man on Wire, or no, I'm sorry, not Man on Wire, The Walk. Man on Wire was good documentary. The Walk was not a very good telling of that story. So I really didn't like The Walk. I thought it was just kind of whatever, and I was really let down by it. I was hoping this wasn't going to be more of the same, because I'm really interested in the history of Everest and all the stories of Everest. So I definitely wanted to check this out, and it was enjoyable. I thought it was pretty good. I didn't think it was perfect. I didn't think it was great, but it still was enjoyable. I've seen so many documentaries on this horrible expedition to Everest. I was at 94, I want to say. I don't see a date on here, but it was like one of the worst Everest climbs ever, where this horrible storm rolls in and just all these people died, and it was really, really bad. Just a horrible experience for these people, and just the way they died, and getting caught up in the exposure and the elements, and just horrible stuff went on. And I've seen so many documentaries on it, and I would say the documentaries were kind of more interesting. They kind of tell the story a little bit better. This was, Hollywood. It was very dramatic and built up and whatnot, and they had to make it into a very suspenseful, enjoyable story, as opposed to just kind of telling the story, which in of itself is already very interesting to begin with. So I would kind of say, if you see this and maybe you didn't like it, or even if you did like it, but you haven't seen any documentaries, which there are many out there, if you haven't seen any documentaries on this subject, check it out. Very interesting story, and definitely worth looking into it from more of a documentary standpoint than a Hollywood standpoint. But all in all, it was pretty decent. I did enjoy it. I would recommend it if you have any interest in this type of story. I would say the only downfall with this is you really don't get too involved like in the characters, because there are so many characters. It's basically there's like 3, well, there's actually more expeditions, but you kind of get caught up in 3. 2 of them you really get caught up in. The third one you don't really, you don't really care about them too much. They're just kind of coming into the picture here and there. But it's these 2 main expeditions going up to Everest. They kind of team up together, and there's so many people on each one of the teams, where they're constantly switching back between the people and what's happening, and what's happening to who, and who's surviving and who's dying and who made it back down, and there's also people back in the United States, like the family members who they're talking to and whatnot, and it keeps going back and forth to all these different people, and it's hard to get like emotionally involved in any of these people because there's just so many of them. I will give it that kind of stunk a little bit. That was kind of like the one downfall I'd say to the movie, but otherwise it was pretty decent. I did watch this in 3D. I had the 3D Blu-ray version of it, and I would also say this is a movie you do not need to see in 3D. You would think that a movie like Everest would really benefit from being in 3D. I didn't think so. There's really nothing about this that really stood out to me and really made it seem like a great 3D title. I was watching. It's one of those movies where you watch it and you kind of forget you're even watching it in 3D, and that's not good. If you're watching a movie in 3D and as you're watching it, you completely forget that you're even watching 3D. That's not good, and that's kind of what I had going on this one. So I would say, if you're going to pick this up and you're thinking, do I want to get in 3D? Do I not want to get in 3D? You do not need to have this movie in 3D. Standard Blu-ray release. I would say get in high definition, because it did look beautiful in high definition, but you really don't need to have it in 3D. One other downfall I'm going to say also as I'm thinking about it, I would say that some of the sets, you kind of could tell they were sets. I think it is part of the unfortunate nature of high definition is that you really got to put a lot of effort now into your sets and all that stuff to make it look absolutely perfectly legitimate. Otherwise, you're going to be kind of able to tell. And there were certain times within this movie where I could kind of tell they were on a set, not on a real mountain and stuff like that. You could sort of tell it like the textures of the rocks or the snow or something like that. It just looks sort of off. I would say that happened a few times, but it really didn't take you away from it. Because all around, it's this part that maybe looks a little off, but then of course, like you're looking at the background, it's mountains and whatnot because they have all the CGI and stuff, so it works. But there were certain times where it's like, I think you're on a set, not actually on a mountain, and that kind of took me away from it a little bit. But anyway, I would still say the movie's good. It's just not perfect. It has its flaws, but it is a fun watch. It is a good movie. It's based on a very, very, very interesting story, which again I would highly recommend checking out any of the many documentaries about this expedition. Check those out to learn more about this just really interesting and really tragic story. But Everest, good movie. See it. Okay, I'm going to kind of be probably in the minority with this one, but I watched Zoolander No. 2, and I thought it was just okay. And I say that I'm in the minority there because it seemed like a lot of you guys seem to like it. When I said I was watching this, a lot of you guys left comments saying it was hilarious, you liked it. Some of you said you even liked it better than Zoolander. I would just say this is just a mediocre follow-up. I like Zoolander. I thought Zoolander was great. Very funny, enjoyable movie. I mean, it's goofy. It's ridiculous. It's just, it's stupid potty humor like all the time, but it's a funny movie. I like it. I thought this was just kind of an okay follow-up. It's not a bad story. It was enjoyable, just not as enjoyable as the first. This movie needed more Will Ferrell as well. Will Ferrell really didn't come to this movie until the very end, and his character was definitely the funniest character in the movie. I love that he was kind of crazy in the first one, obviously, but in this one, he's completely just doesn't care about anything anymore because, he's been in prison and now he's just kind of like, it's changed him basically. So I thought his character was hilarious coming back in this movie and just how he's kind of got even more crazy. I loved it. But unfortunately, like I said, he's only in this movie like for a short amount of time. He just kind of comes in at the end and does what he has to do, which is a great way to end the movie, but I wanted more of him. So again, it was okay. It was all right. It was mediocre. When I say check it out, if you're a big fan of Zoolander, then see this. It was okay. It had some funny moments in it. We got pretty much most of the cast back. It was enjoyable. I'm getting choked up. It was enjoyable. And again, I would say if you're a fan of Zoolander, it is worth seeing. But maybe you didn't really care that much for Zoolander. You just thought Zoolander was kind of just okay. Then maybe you don't need to see this one. It wasn't that great. It was just kind of a mediocre follow-up that I enjoyed. I'd recommend the Zoolander fans, but otherwise, not something you need to see, at least in my opinion. But again, I'm kind of in the minority with that. A lot of you guys seem to like it, so check it out if you want to check it out. All right, and then I had to watch this. I just been like being inundated with Wizard of Oz stuff recently. Everything from being in Disney and seeing some Wizard of Oz stuff there. I've heard some people talking about it, and I just recently picked this up. And it seems that Wizard of Oz is being like thrown in my face recently. So it kind of got me really in the mood to check this out since I just picked this up, and that is Wizard of Oz 3D. I don't really think I need to talk too much about Wizard of Oz. It's an absolutely amazing movie. One of the best movies probably ever made. It's fantastic. It's such a great fantasy movie. I cannot get enough of this. I've been watching it ever since I was a little kid. I'm going to certainly be showing it to Simpsons Jr., and I'll be watching this to the day I die. It's a great, 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 great film. It was pretty awesome watching it in 3D. The 3D looked pretty good. I mean, it's not like one of the best examples of taking a 2D movie and putting it in 3D. It's not like Jurassic Park where I'm like telling you guys, like, you guys need to see Jurassic Park in 3D. It's a fantastic 3D like upscaling. It looked amazing. Jurassic Park looked like it was made to be shot in 3D. It looked, when you watch Jurassic Park in 3D, you're never going to want to watch it again in 2D. It looked that good. This isn't really the case, but it still looked awesome, and if you're like me and you've seen this movie like a billion times, it is an interesting change of pace to be watching it in 3D, and it looked good. I would recommend this one. It wasn't like, kind of wasn't like Everest where I forgot I was watching it in 3D the whole time, and again, it could play in the part that I've seen this movie so many times that I just never forgot that I was watching in 3D. Maybe if like it's your first time seeing this, or you haven't watched it a lot of times, you know, you only see the movie maybe a couple times, maybe you would forget that you're watching it in 3D. But for somebody like me, who's a huge fan, who's seen this movie so many times, I never at one time forgot that I was watching it in 3D. It looked great. It was interesting. It's an interesting way to re-watch this film. So would I recommend it? I would recommend it in 3D. If you're a big fan of this movie, definitely check it out in 3D. It was just a new, fun, interesting way to watch the film, and it's just such a great, great, great movie. I can't recommend it enough. And if for any reason any of you guys out there haven't seen The Wizard of Oz yet, why? One of the greatest movies of all time. See it. And then I was just in the mood to watch a Philadelphian classic and its sequel. I checked out Mannequin and Mannequin 2 on the Move. Two great movies shot locally in Philadelphia. I'm like a half hour outside Philadelphia, and it's always fun to watch movies shot in Philadelphia. And I love these movies. I grew up with these movies. They used to play on TV all the time when I was a kid, and I really haven't watched them since. I think I watched them back when I first picked this up, and I don't even remember. This came out 2008, package design. So I probably bought this in like 2008. It's the last time. So almost 10 years ago was the last time I watched Mannequin and Mannequin 2. Before that, it was like when I was a kid. I think the movies are so much fun. They're kind of one and the same. It's sort of the same story. First one is all about this Egyptian princess who doesn't want to get married to this prince, and wishes to, prays to the gods that she can get out of it. And she basically does, and travels through all time, and she's a mannequin, and she's trying to find like true love. And she finally finds true love, and it's a weird boy meets mannequin love story. And of course she comes to life, and nobody believes her, and in the end everything works out, and they ride off in love. So it's an interesting film. It didn't do too well in theaters when it came out, but it's definitely picked up a bit of a cult following, and it's just a fun, cheesy 80s movie. It's great. I would recommend it if you just love 80s cheese. Mannequin 2 on the Move, more of the same story. It's another princess, but this time she's supposed to marry, or she's fallen in love with this prince, and it's kind of a forbidden marriage. It's not, and the queen captures the prince, or the queen. The queen captures the peasant. I shouldn't say princess. It's a princess. It's a peasant marrying a prince who later is going to become a princess, but that's besides the point. It's a peasant marrying a prince, and it's forbidden love. And the queen finds out about it, captures the peasant and peasant girl, and puts this necklace on her, which puts a curse on her, and she's going to be frozen for 1,000 years or until she finds true love, and yada yada yada. And of course she goes back on all this time, and a descendant of the prince just happens to be working at the department store that this mannequin comes to, and they find each other and they fall in love all over again. And it's pretty cheesy, it's pretty ridiculous, but it's pretty much absolutely fun. I love the Mannequin movies. They're goofy, they're ridiculous, they're fun. And the fact that the whole thing's shot in like the Philadelphia area is definitely a bonus, in my opinion. I love when they're, in the first movie, there's this store trying to take over another store, and it was shot in a Boscov's, and for those of you who don't have, Boscov's is sort of a local area, like retail store, that, the clothing and furniture and stuff like that. And I remember what Boscov's used to look like back in like the 90s. Like I really don't remember too much from the 80s, but I can remember what it looked like in the 90s. Because even like from the 80s into the 90s, the store like never changed. It wasn't until like the late 90s, early 2000s that the stores got like a makeover. But in the 90s, like everything was like neon, and there were neon lights everywhere, and everything was like mirrored. It was so 80s, and they're in one of those stores, and it just looks like, I remember shopping in those stores. It was great. So Mannequin and Mannequin 2, cheesy, fun goodness of people falling in love with mannequins who come to life. Fun movie. All right, and then I checked out a new one here, Pray for Rock and Roll. Hadn't seen this one before, wanted to check it out. Interesting story also about a older, like 40-year-old woman who's always trying to get into rock and roll and become this big star, and it just never worked out for her. Now she's old and playing in these bands, and does she want to do it? Does she not want to do it? Where's her life going? Should she quit? But it's a story about these basically 4 women in this band, and their effed up lives. Everything from when they were children to where they are now. One girl gets raped. Fortunately, something bad happens to Lori Petty. I won't spoil it to you. Won't spoil it for you. I was actually surprised to see Lori Petty was in this movie. I didn't know that. It's always nice to see Tank Girl show up, or Kit show up in these movies. So I actually really liked pray for rock and roll. It was an interesting story just about these women in this rock band and just the horrible experiences they had, the horrible experiences they are having, and what ends up coming to them in the end, and kind of just them sort of just coming to terms with who they are and what has happened to them. So, not one of the greatest movies I've ever seen, or anything like that. I wouldn't say this movie's fantastic. It's not a must-see, but if you do want to check it out, it is definitely worth seeing. It was a fun movie. It was an interesting movie, and pretty crazy lives of these women. So definitely check that one out. And last up is a movie I can't physically hold up and show you, as I only have a digital copy of it, and it's called A Film Unfinished, which was a really tough movie to watch. It is a documentary about a Nazi propaganda film that was never finished. They ended up finding it and checking it out, and it was supposed to be like kind of the greatest and biggest of the Nazi Germany propaganda films, showing basically a complete BS lie of life in the ghettos, the Jewish ghettos, and kind of lying and saying that things aren't so bad and people are living in luxury, and showing, and then they did show both like the more the Jewish community with money and the poor Jewish community, and they kind of made it look like it was horrible, where the people with the Jews with money were just like turning up their nose and not even helping out their brethren, their poor brethren and stuff like that, and they really made Jews have to look horrible, of course, but then they also made it out to look like that the Jews in the concentration camp were doing well and getting proper burials and eating fine and all that stuff. But of course, it was all staged. All this was set up. It wasn't like they were actually just coming there and filming real things that were going on. No, they would pick out Jewish people in the crowd and say, okay, you come into this restaurant and pretend like you're walking in, ordering your food, and sit down and eat, and make it look like you're doing well and stuff like that, when really that wasn't the case at all. So pretty messed up. And of course, as always, I still find these movies hard to watch, mainly because of me putting Cinema Sickness Jr.'s face on every child, and of course they show a lot of children in this movie, skin and bones and dying and not doing very well, and it's just so hard. And knowing that like, most of the people who you see in this film, I think what they said, within 3 months of this film being shot, were sent off to a concentration camp and murdered. Really difficult to watch, just to see all these people who are going to die, and these children who are suffering and who are going to die. And of course, again, as a parent, I just like a little over 2 years ago, I would have watched this movie and just thought, oh, this is such a horrible thing, and just wow, like I can't believe it, which I certainly did think this time around. But now it's even hard for me to watch, and I just want to cry my eyes out, because I just picture my son's face and all the little toddlers running around. I'm just like, oh jeez. So very hard film to watch, as most films about like the Jewish people during the Nazi regime. It's very difficult to watch, and this one was definitely difficult to watch, but also very interesting. Just an interesting look into Nazi propaganda. So if you're into World War II history, it is definitely something to check out. But it was a little slow, I would say. It wasn't the most interesting documentary I ever watched as far as like pace was concerned, but it was still interesting. And if you're into the history of Nazi Germany and propaganda films and whatnot, it's definitely something to check out. So that is it, guys. That's everything I recently watched. A lot of this stuff was before Disney, and then we took a little bit of a break, and then back into the swing of things, and definitely now back in the swing of things, where I've been watching like 2 movies every night. I need to get myself caught back up with some movie watching. So, all right, guys, that is it. So like I always say, thank you guys so much for checking this video out. Be sure to hit that like button down below. Also, if you want to see a new video from me every single day, hit that subscribe button, and you will get one. And also, if you want to grab yourself a Cinema Sickness t-shirt, hoodie, tank top, baby gear, kids gear, buttons, all kinds of cool Cinema Sickness gear, head over to cinemasickness.spreadshirt.com, where you can get yourself some of that. And also, if you want to share your support for new content and show your thanks and appreciation, head over to patreon.com/cinemasickness, where every tiny little bit helps and is very much greatly appreciated. So again, that is it. Thanks for watching. Have a good one, and I will see you all tomorrow. Bye.